Hi, welcome to Pockets, the art journaling series where we make ephemera and fill it in our pocket journal. Today we are collecting our creativity. You can go ahead and pause here and read through the prompt if you need to refamiliarize yourself with it. Basically, we are focusing on creative practices that fill our cup, that make us feel whole, even if they aren't output related. I think that is like the most important aspect of this exercise. I chose to do some drawings of the different aspects of my creative practices. This first example is me walking my dog. I go for daily walks, if not multiple daily walks, and it usually does include our dog, Mellow Jello. I've been digging the white and black vibe for my illustrations lately. Tried to do some colors when I was adding some color fill to my comics, and honestly I felt like it just took away from like the vibe of the illustrations. So I really like how this turns out because I'm gonna end up cutting all of these out with the lettering and the pictures. So I am going with it. Mellow, she is a black and white dog. Maybe she's the inspiration for this, but I think that the way these turn out are really fun. Walking, you may not think is like something that is creative. I think that Julia Cameron called these artist brain activities. Sometimes I listen to a book, sometimes I listen to a podcast, and I've been challenging myself to not listen to anything while I go through the motions of walking and observing and focusing on mindfulness, and just kind of getting lost in the process of walking. It is something that has inspired a lot of my poetry, which is observational and related a lot to nature and life cycles in nature. Here I'm drawing my iPhone, which you wouldn't think is part of a creative practice, but I don't have a camera. I've never been able to justify paying the expense for a camera, but I've been part of my practice when I'm walking is I've been taking pictures of sunset, which I use. Sometimes I use the pictures to pair with my with my poetry. Sometimes I use the photos to pair and make like more abstract printables that I share with you guys on my newsletter. And sometimes I just use them in my collage, and sometimes they're just for me. We have some beautiful sunsets out here in the country, and so paying attention has been another way that my creative cup gets filled. Cooking is a more practical one, but it is a way that I engage prayerfully and mindfully with my day-to-day activities. I've kind of fallen by the wayside of cooking because we've had a busy fall. My kids are in soccer. We've been dealing with headaches from weather changes, and our water heater broke and we had to get it replaced. So there's been a lot going on, and I'm hoping I can get back into my cooking practice and experimenting with different ways to create delicious, nutritious meals. I drew yarn because I'm a fiber artist. I've been experimenting more with slow stitching and textile work lately. And right now I'm going to get started on a journal pouch for my pocket or my passport size traveler's notebook. But I think that just textile art in general, it's a great way to be sustainable, and it is a great way to meditate. I also drew the pen that I'm drawing with right now, which is the Uniball Vision Elite pen. It's really juicy. It has the ink that flows out, and it's a little wet, so it will smear until it dries. But I like really scribbly, messy drawings anyways. I'm not the best drawer in the world, so it is a fun pen to get that messy, weird little look that I like to go for. Here I'm drawing some prayer hands. Please note, I don't mean prayer in like the literal Christian sense, although sometimes I do pray the rosary. My spirituality is evolving, ever-changing, and very fluid, but I have found that engaging in conversation with some type of higher power, whatever that looks like for you, can really help fill the creative cup. It is something that they talk about in The Artist Way quite a bit. And so just something to keep in mind, but definitely not something that you have to do. Now I'm drawing a little book stack because I've been trying to get focused on reading and studying again lately. I'm trying to rebuild the capacity for my attention to focus on things that are outside of my phone and outside of social media. I think the first book here I put is Pure Act, and then I put The Artist's Way, and then Leaving a Trace, because that's one of the books that I'm reading right now. Pure Act is about the poet Robert Lax, who was heavy in the minimalist movement, and he's one of my heroes, kind of a folk saint that I pray to a lot because he converted to Catholicism, but he ended up, it was like very mystical, very like on his own. He was really good friends with Thomas Merton, and they exchanged letters for most of their lives after they met at Columbia. He was Jewish. He decided to convert, and it was something that he did at the monastery in Gethsemane with Thomas Merton, very much on a whim, but after studying and practicing Catholicism and the prayers along with that for a really long time. I find this significant just because he lived a life where he prioritized his journaling the way that it felt right to him. He also was a poet, and he didn't compromise what he felt was poetry, for what people thought poetry should look like. Some of his poems, only contain like 4 or 5 different words. He has a poem or a collection of poems in a collection called, I think it's The Circus of the Sun, because he was quite obsessed with the circus. It's something that I believe his father introduced him to, and it's this idea of pure act, like pure being in the moment, being so caught up in the present moment that you're only concerned with the actions that you're taking at that time. And he found that the people at the circus really embodied that. And he traveled with a circus for a while, and then he wrote this collection of poetry, which was loosely based on stories in the Bible, but more so about like the setting up of the circus and the way that a day in the life of the circus progresses. It was really profound read for me. It's called Pure Act. I think it's by Michael McGregor, because Robert Lax passed away. I don't remember what year it was, but he lived a good portion of his life on different Greek islands, finally ending up on Patmos, which was a pretty deserted Greek island, and he was pretty accepted by locals there, and was kind of viewed as a mystical man, a saint. He walked a lot alone. He was kind of a hermit, and he's somebody that I really look up to. Both spiritually and in an artistic sense. Some of his poetry pamphlets now are really hard to come by. If you guys ever come across a Robert Lax pamphlet out in the wild, let me know. I would love to own more of his work. I now just have one of his main collections of letters and journal entries in The Circus of the Sun compiled into a collection that was put out more recently. So that's my little tangent about that. So now I'm doing some fussy cutting, and I am getting all of my little illustrations cut out so that I can put them into my little creativity emergency kit. I think that this is going to be really fun looking when I'm done with it. Now I'm going to shuffle up and pick one of my collage cards. I haven't added to this pile in a while, and that's a project that I want to get back to, making collage cards. And I pulled balance. This feels important because when you are gathering all of these different things that contribute to your creative life, it's important to find balance. I find myself wanting to focus on one thing and hyper focus and really push out a lot of output and get a lot of work out into the world. But I find that creativity begets creativity, and that sometimes spending the night crocheting, even though it's just a blanket for me and I might not share it with the internet and I might not share it and it may not contribute to my greater artwork like as a whole, it still plays a really important part in my creative practice. So now I'm going to pick a tarot card from Tarot for All Ages by E. Heidel. This is the same tarot deck I've been using for this whole process, and I think it's really important to remember that there's different ways for us to engage in tarot practices. This is probably a good time for me to plug the blog and newsletter project I'm doing, where I walk each week with a different tarot card. This first week I walked with Strength, and I shared the culmination in my newsletter, and I'm thinking about doing a bi-weekly or a monthly podcast to talk about the way that living the tarot and this living practice show up in my day-to-day life. I think that it's easy to just look in the book for the definitions, which is partially what I do here after I pull it, but I also think that there's different ways that we can embody the meanings of these cards, and we need to remember that we can engage with them in different ways. For this pocket, I pulled the Two of Wands, which makes sense considering the fact that it makes me think of like diverging paths and the different choices that we can make each day as a creative person, but ultimately like it still feeds into the same, it's like a bunch of different little creeks and rivers ultimately feeding into the same ocean of our creativity. Here I pulled the book out for you, which is about the question is at hand. Do you want to change the situation or wait for more information? Check in with yourself to find out. Do you want to keep going in the direction that you are headed, or are you continuing out of habit? Take a moment to find more clarity in whatever you are currently doing. So it's about creative choices. And I find when I feel like I am getting all muddled and mixed up about how I am handling the work I'm putting out, I find that switching up what I'm doing by engaging in one of my other creative habits is a great way for me to pay attention to that. The wands represent actions, inspiration, choices, and travel, new ideas, insights. It's really, to me, it represents creativity as a whole, and really that like fire element is there. So I think that it's important to remember that we can read the book when it comes to the tarot, but we don't necessarily have to go by the definitions. Look for the associations that come up personally to you in your own personal anecdotes and your own lived experience. And if you want to check out the Tarot Diaries, the first newsletter went out and is on my Substack and on my website, it's a WordPress website. The URL is starmothpress.com. So now I'm gathering up all my materials. I'm going to make this little envelope, and that's going to be the container for my little emergency creativity kit. And I'm going to go for like Alice in Wonderland vibes and write "Open Me" to remember how creative you are. If you remember in Alice in Wonderland, she would find something that says "Eat me, try me, drink me." And I always found that very whimsical and very fun. And this is kind of like a reminder, note to self type thing where I can flip through this journal, I can get to this pocket, I can see "Open Me," and I can be like, oh, what's in here? Because after so long, I'm not going to remember. The little anecdote I wanted to share with you guys about creative artifacts and journaling as a whole, and just the little proof of life things that we leave behind. Yesterday, I went thrifting. It was my artist date that I did, and for week 3 of the Artist Way, and I found a book. It's a daily reader, which I'm falling more and more in love with since I got involved in reading Cody Cook Parrott's Look About You, a book of ordinary prayers. Daily readers are great if you want a really short, approachable practice, and I know that they're really heavily involved in the AA and 12-step culture, which is not something I've ever been involved in as a sober person. I've never gone to AA, and I've never been involved in that process of recovery, but I was intrigued by this idea of the daily reader. I saw this book. It was $1 at the thrift shop. I picked it up. I didn't even flip through it. It's like Daily Prayers for Women or something. It's not really Christian based. It doesn't focus heavily on that anyways. So for the spiritual people who are not Christian, don't worry, there are still plenty of options out there. I know Bridget's Grove specifically does a lot of women-based spiritual practices and has a lot of daily readers available. But I wanted to pick this up. Somebody donated it, and it was $1, and it felt like it would be cool to add it to my collection. I get home and I open it, and it has all of these inscriptions from when the person who was in rehab in 2004, they met all of these people, and they wrote all these inscriptions in this little daily reader for the person to take when they got out of rehab about how wonderful they were, to remember how they deserve good things. And it was just this great little time capsule of somebody I don't even know, but it's this proof of life. It's a breadcrumb of this person's existence. And I thought it was a really magical moment to find that and to read all of the ways this person connected with people in a place like rehab where a lot of people hit rock bottom. I've never been to rehab necessarily, but I have been into the psych ward for being watched while my bipolar medications got evened out. And so I appreciate the fact that these people connected and thought ahead to gift this person a tool, almost like an anchor that they could tap into from the place, because being sober in rehab and practicing prayer and staying in tune with what's important is easy, but when we get into the real world, that's when we really struggle. I added this little stitched ghostie because it is one of my newer creative practices and I'm really proud of it. It's like a little quilt collage thing made out of fabric with lots of slow stitching, and I added a face and some tulle at the bottom. She's like a little neon punk ghostie. I made a cat for a friend for their birthday, and it really inspired me. And so I've been doing more slow stitching, and I'm actually going to make a pouch for my traveler's notebook next. For next time, we're going to be naming our values. Go ahead and pause so that you can read here, or it'll be in the notes below. But find some lists of core values on the internet and go through and try to pick 5. And we're going to journal and make ephemera about that. I hope that you're kind to yourself this week, and I hope that you guys do something creative today. All right, thanks. Bye.